Hi, Ashley. How's it going?
Good.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the PUDs Podcast. So we're here to do a little SPUDs. I've been talking over for at least, the past month or so in our episodes, I think, mentioning that we really wanted to do a quick episode just doing an intro to winter hiking gear. And we'll end up sort of talking about some winter hiking kind of experiences and just, I guess, basically a whole myriad of topics that kind of come along with hiking in the winter and the challenges that actually brings. So without further ado, I think we're just going to go on. Kick into it. A little background with me and Ash. So I think I've done 29 out of the 48, but I think I know I've done 29 out of the 48 of the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire in the winter. We've done them all in the normal season. We've already finished the normal list back in 2019. I'm starting to sort of low-key do the seasonal list and sort of keep track of gridding, even though I don't really consider myself a gridder at this point. I think I'm at like 111 peaks or something like that. But yeah. So, Ash, do you want to give a little bit of your background? I know we have two really long, extensive episodes on hiking the 48 and sort of our journey doing that. So, go back and look into those if you want to dig in more of it. I'll just give a high-level summary since you haven't been on the podcast in a bit and talking about hiking.
Yeah, so as Nick mentioned, we completed the entire 48 list back in September of 2019. The first time I did a winter 4,000 footer was with Nick when we were in the process of finishing that list. Yep. My first winter 4,000 footer was Womback.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of how many I've done so far. I feel like we were just talking about this. Yeah, we were.
I think you're at like 8 or 9, I think, because you've done like Womback, Hale, Cabot, Pierce. So that's 4.
Jackson,
5. You've done the Hancocks. So 6, 7.
Tomfield, Wiley.
Yeah, so about 10. I think that's it. I think that's all of them.
Yeah, I think that's right. So yeah, I've done about 10 of the winter 4,000 footers. Some of them I've done only in the winter, and then some of them I've done in the winter and in another season. So Nick is definitely ahead of me, especially lately in the winter hiking. It's definitely something that I feel like I kind of got like a little bit of not a rude awakening, but I was definitely humbled by the first few experiences I had doing winter hikes with what goes into it, the layering, all stuff that we'll talk about today. But I think as I kind of realized what you need, what you don't need, what's best. Winter hiking definitely has its own separate beauty to it. I know Nick has touched upon that in previous episodes. So that's pretty much it for now. I know we'll get into it a lot more.
As far as winter hiking too, like I've done some of the 52 of the views. We've done a decent amount of winter hikes before we even started to really do the 48.
True. And I guess
peaks.
To give a little bit of a background on my experience just being outdoors in the winter in general, not to go too far back, but just a quick. So I grew up ever since I was like 4 or 5 years old, at least once or twice every winter season going skiing. So before we got into, our hiking journey.
And you mean like going away for like a weekend or
going away for a weekend.
Not just like literally just skiing once or twice a year, which is kind of what we do now. But
yeah, going away for a weekend. So during that weekend, I might ski across multiple days, but like 1 or 2 separate trips per year, since I was 4 or 5 years old. So I've kind of grown up doing things outside in the snow, in the cold. So, but as you'll listen and hear today, hiking in the winter versus skiing or doing other winter outdoor sports, totally different. A lot more.
Yeah, there's similarities in different things. Those 2 things I was going to mention. So I grew up ice fishing and doing stuff outside as a kid. So I think I grew up with a pretty good concept of how to stay warm and stay outside, especially ice fishing. Like a lot of times during the day, you're just chilling and not actually really doing too much. True. Which is difficult.
Whereas with skiing,
it's similar to skiing though or snowboarding when you're sitting on a ski lift, especially if it's outside. Like most places are around here, you're not in like a heated tram or anything.
Yeah,
so you're kind of freezing.
I definitely think obviously there's different aspects with like when you go skiing. Obviously not when you go ice fishing necessarily, but when you go skiing, you have access to a lodge most of the time, unless you're doing like more backcountry skiing, I guess. But like you have that option versus hiking, of course. Like when you're out for the length of the hike.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to mention as well that we've done several of the Adirondack high peaks in the winter too, the Adirondack 46. Yep. So we actually did one of our most spectacular hikes, and still to this day one of the most epic undercasts I've seen besides when I was just up on Adams and Madison was when we did Marcy in January of 2021, I think.
Yeah, January 2021.
Absolutely insane undercast. But yeah, we've done like Marcy, I've done Phelps tabletop, and I've done upper and lower Wolfjaw. And I did that last winter in February 2023. And that was absolutely one of my most difficult winter hikes and hikes in general I've ever done. So shout out to the Adirondacks. Those two peaks are seriously crazy peaks, especially doing them in wet snow with wet snow falling down on me. That was a hell of a hike. And yeah, it'll be memorable breaking my way out to upper Wolfjaw. That was, to say the least, in a good way after the fact. But it was a real bitch to get up there in the winter.
Yeah, and I would definitely have to say Marcy. I mean, not that I've done as many winter hikes, but it definitely sticks out to me as my favorite winter hike that I've done. When I did Phelps because I didn't make it to...
You did tabletop.
That's right. I did tabletop. I didn't make it to Phelps. I was actually very early on in my pregnancy with Rylan when I did that hike. Would not recommend doing a strenuous hike while pregnant. Obviously, there were some things. I did talk to my doctor before I went. I had my initial appointment, and he had said since I was in hiking shape.
Yeah, you already did that a bunch.
It's something I've already done. My body's familiar with it. He said, just listen to your body. But, as far as I'm concerned, you're fine. So, I mean, it worked out. It was great.
And we didn't separate for that long, too.
Not necessarily something I'd recommend.
We don't like it. I mean, I very rarely separate from groups when I'm hiking. That's generally bad practice. You shouldn't do it. But we hiked together a lot, and I think I was maybe a quarter mile from the summit of Phelps, and I bolted up and then back down.
You weren't very far.
I was gone for like 20 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, and I kind of just paced back and forth trying to stay warm while he did that.
Yeah, so...
I didn't want him to not do it.
And we had our walkie-talkies on us.
We did. We never had to use them, from what I remember.
No, we didn't have to, but we had them so we could communicate if we really needed to. But yeah, anyways, so that's just some background on us and our winter hiking experience and sort of experiences as kids doing stuff. So I kind of broke this down into sort of a little list of just what I could think logically to group things. So the first thing I was going to talk about is sort of what you get dressed in. We'll start with what you actually put on your person when you go hiking and what I'll typically throw on in the winter. So as far as what I wear, I generally wear this base layer, which is a 250 gram, I believe it's 250 weight, smart wool, like top shirt. It's almost like a thermal shirt, but made out of wool. Their stuff is really expensive. Like I totally get that with people, but I love them. They wick moisture super well. And for the price, I'm wearing this one right now. I'm literally wearing it as we record the podcast, but I have an older one that I finally accidentally ripped, but I've had it for probably like 6 or 7 years. And I go walking and running in this like year round in the winter and hiking in it. So I'll wear that base layer as my top. As far as bottom, I can get away with just insulated like hiking pants. I have REI ones. I used to have EMS ones that I used to use all the time until I ripped them in the butt last year, butt sliding down somewhere, and finally had to get it. People were sick at looking at duct tape on my butt and stuff. But I'll wear those. Some people will wear leggings and stuff underneath. I run really warm when I hike. Like I've hiked in these pants already in a wind chill that was like around -20, and I was perfectly fine. Other people, your mileage may vary, but that's what I wear. I have 400 gram insulated Keen Rebel boots. I forget which model the Rebel there are. They've worked really well for me. I usually don't have to wear toe warmers unless it's really cold. I'll throw those in. It's important to remember too, when you're putting on, like a lot of people will think to just put on extra socks when you're putting your boots on, but you need to have good circulation in your feet and your hands. If your feet are actually really tight and constricted in a boot, it actually limits your blood flow and can make your feet in turn colder. So maybe not something you think right off the bat, but with those Keen Rebel boots, like I can wear like just darn tough socks or sort of winter smart wool socks, and usually my feet are pretty fine. They might get cold and you'll end up losing feeling here or there, depending on how long you're out hiking and if you have snowshoes on or different things like that. But that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much what got my feet covered, my pants, my shirt. And then typically I'll wear either a fleece vest over my shirt, or I'll wear I actually have a newer Arc'teryx. I don't know what material it's made from, probably like wool and synthetic stuff. vest that I wear over my chest. And I also will, this year I kind of started doing this. I should have been doing this for a while, but I'll wear typically just a wool hat, and I wear like thin liner gloves, and I'll actually swap out when I get to the top of the summit, when I hike like into something drier, when I know I'm not going to exert myself and get sweaty. So I've started doing that this year. And that's pretty much what I'll keep. And I try to crack some hand warmers and usually put them in my pockets is another trick I usually try to do, just so I have them in case I need them. So that's generally what I wear. That's what when I'm hot hiking, it can be like 5 or 10 degrees out. I can pretty much hike in that and be comfortable. Again, it's a lot of layering up and layering down, which we'll chat a little bit about. But what do you usually wear, Ash, when you go out?
So for the girl hikers out there, so maybe what we can do too, now that I'm thinking of it, let me know what you think. Maybe we can link in the show description.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Some of the products that we use.
Yeah, I'll throw those in the description.
We're not sponsored by any of these products, but just things that maybe people who are looking to start winter hiking, and it's overwhelming sometimes. It's easy to get caught up in like the name brands and what's really the best.
For sure.
So we can definitely link maybe a couple things that we talked about that we use.
Yeah. We'll go through and kind of I'll put the list, like I got my pack stuff and all that, and we'll throw that in the episode description so you can refer to that.
Yeah. So for what I wear, not very different from what Nick is wearing, what he just described. So for my base layer, I tend to always wear leggings and then a long sleeve shirt. So the material that I use is the smart wool material.
Are your leggings smart wool leggings?
Yes, I have so I have a couple different things. Typically though, I like to wear my smart wool leggings. It's a whole set that I have, which I can find like something similar to that we can link. But I have a whole set that I wear where it's smart wool leggings, and then it's smart wool long sleeve top.
Yeah, similar. I'm pretty sure it's a 250 like I've got.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not very good with knowing exactly what kind, but and it's very fitted to me. You almost want it to be, you don't want it to be loose. The idea is that you don't want to be uncomfortable, but you want it to fit snugly to you. So I'll wear that. I also have a couple other thicker pairs of leggings. They're not smart wool. I had a pair of Under Armour brand leggings that I had, I'm not even gonna lie, since I was like 16, 17, and I wore them for years and years and years. They weren't the smart wool material, but they were a nice thick like spandex material, so sometimes I would wear those. I also still have an Under Armour long sleeve moisture wicking top that has like a fleece lining to it that I'll sometimes wear as a base as well. As for my feet, I tend to wear wool, smart wool or Darn Tough socks. Typically I only wear one layer of socks. Every once in a while, if it's going to be a really cold day, I'll wear one layer of smart wool socks. I'll put a toe warmer in kind of sandwiched in between, and then I'll wear a second sock. Obviously, if you're doing that, you want to make sure that your boots are not going to be too tight, like Nick said. But for the most part, I'll wear one wool sock, either smart wool or Darn Tough are really good brands. And then I will wear a base glove. And then I've personally always been a mitten fan. Like ever since I was a kid skiing, I've always loved mittens over gloves. So I'll wear the base layer glove, but then I'll wear like a mitten over it. And you can buy some really nice mittens too that like have like the long like straps on them, so you can actually just have them hanging from your wrists when you're not wearing them, but they're easy access to put on your hands. And then for my head, I wear a couple different things. So and you can try to keep it to what I was trying to say, because we're just going to talk about more stuff later, but what you like start out hiking in, because I didn't get into mittens and things like that. That's definitely what I start out in. For my head, what I typically like to do is, I notice me personally, I mean, you'll kind of learn as you go, everyone's different, but what I've learned is I tend to get warm where I don't want a full hat, maybe not until we get to the top or if I'm stopping for a long period of time. But I really like almost like I have a couple of them. They're like thick, almost like headbands, and it covers my ears. So like most of my head is exposed, but my ears stay covered. And it keeps my hair out of my face, all of that. It catches any sweat that might be coming from my head. So I usually will start off in something like that, but I'll always bring a hat in case I need it. But I typically don't start off in a hat. If I do, it's very short-lived. I usually end up taking it off.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, I think you've got like 400 gram insulated oboes boots are your winter boots that you use.
Yep.
And kind of along with the topic of layering, I did want to talk a little bit about heat management and how important that is when you're winter hiking. So when you hear what we wear when we're starting a hike, you always want to you're better off starting cold and getting hot than starting off because it's very typical in the winter, like especially if you're hiking in the morning, it might be below zero even depending where you're going, especially up in New Hampshire. So it's very intriguing to want to stack on all this clothing, especially if you've been sitting in a warm car for like 3 hours and you get out. It's kind of tough adjusting sometimes, but you don't want to end up getting super sweaty because when you get sweaty, the moisture basically is causing, and combined with the cold air, is going to cause you to get a lot colder. So a lot of winter hiking is making sure that any time that you're getting hot on the trail, you're trying to manage that sweating as much as you can. And if you're like me, like I get super sweaty. Not as sweaty as some people, and I'm sure, and I know there's people that don't sweat as much as me, but my back of my chest gets super sweaty. So typically if I'm going uphill, like in the winter, like I might be getting cold in some flat spots to the point that I even want to throw on a puffy or my vest, but I'll end up ripping off my vest and everything, and I'll be hiking just in like this smart wool shirt and like gloves and a hat. A lot of times when you're warm going uphill, like your body, I believe I read a statistic where it's something rough, like when you're actually moving around, your body generates almost 3 times the amount of heat that it does when it's at rest. So
your body's very efficient at keeping you warm.
Yeah, you don't notice it, I think, all the time. I mean, obviously you sweat and stuff, but it's very evident when you're in a really cold environment, how your body temperature and how hot you are and how much heat your body's producing fluctuates. So the idea is to trap that heat when you need to trap it and need to stay warm, and then to let out that heat when you don't want it to stick around. Like the last thing you want is to be super sweaty and you're going to be hot and stuff, and then we're say like you're inexperienced, you don't really know what you're doing. A lot of people end up getting super sweaty and they'll get to a summit and the wind's howling and they're out above tree line and all of a sudden they're freezing their ass off, frankly. And it's like you need to layer up and sort of accommodate and plan for that. Like you're going to get very cold quickly, especially if the temperature's like around 5 or 10 degrees or even in the teens and it's windy and the feels like might be -15, -20. Like it's amazing how quickly you can go from sweating to being absolutely freezing cold and starting to lose feeling in your hands. Again, not trying to deter people from trying to winter hike or something. It's just something to be aware of. You don't want your first experience to be losing feeling in your hands for like an hour when you're out there. It's not going to make for an enjoyable experience. And it definitely can happen. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. And to kind of add a little bit from that, a couple things. So one thing I did forget to mention when I was talking about my base layer and kind of like what I start out in addition, unless it's a milder day, if it's like a typical winter hike, cold day, single digits, teens, whatever, I'll typically start off, in addition to what I described earlier, I'll also wear, I have this like Patagonia fleece like pullover that I'll usually also start in. And then that's usually once we start moving more, usually within the first like 30 minutes or so, I'm usually taking that off.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I start in. I always recommend to like, I think have things accessible to you too.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
important.
So like if you, for example, you might not need, so if you have like your like when we get to the top, which we might get into more later, so I don't want to jump too ahead, but I won't necessarily have my hard shell jacket as accessible as like my fleece pullover, for example. So like my fleece pullover, I might keep at the very top of my bag. So if I kind of go back and forth and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of cold again, I can easily throw that on. But I can also easily take it off and just keep it in the top of my bag. So keeping things accessible and how you're going to use them too, for sure.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. It's almost like you knew that I was going to lead into this next and we didn't really talk about it that much ahead of time.
Wow.
But yeah. So we're going to go into what's in my pack and what I carry in the winter. And like you were saying, one part of that, I didn't get into specifics of the layers of where I throw stuff in my backpack. That might actually change depending on the day and what I know the weather's going to be like. But that's definitely a thing, especially if you carry more around the size packs that we do. Yours is a little bit bigger. So first of all, my backpack that has become mostly my 4-season hiking pack, I will take out a Gregory, I believe it's a 56 liter or 55 liter that I have downstairs sometimes in the winter, or depending if we're hiking with a lot of people and I need to carry extra stuff for people because I feel bad if they don't hike a ton. And I've had that happen before where like our dads, where I carried like extra water and stuff and I was basically a pack mule, but doesn't happen as much as it used to.
I don't make him do that. I carry my weight.
No. But I have an Osprey Talon 33 liter backpack. The thing that really drew me to this pack, and I think I've been using it for 3 years now, is that it has straps on it for snowshoes that I'm able to cinch down my 25-inch MSR Evo Ascents pretty easily. It's kind of a battle to get water in the sides with snowshoes over it, but I digress. It works well for me. I find that it's just about big enough to hold everything I need in the winter, and I feel comfortable with it. It's got straps on it and a bunch of different places to hang stuff off of if you got carabiners and stuff. So yeah, and I think you have an Osprey Stratus 38 or something like that. I'm trying to think of what it's a 38 liter backpack.
It's a little bit bigger than yours, which I think at the time when I was looking at backpacks, I opted just to get one like a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget. Check.
I think the sizing is a little weird.
But I know it's a 38 liter for sure.
Okay. Yeah,
it's a 38 liter.
That sounds about right. Yeah. It's a great backpack, though. It fits. I've never had any issues with space or fitting what I need.
Yeah. And what I keep in my pack, and I tried my best not to forget anything. So I might actually think of a few things as I'm going through this. But I keep, and this is what I carry in the winter too, keeping with the winter theme. A lot of this stuff I do carry 3 seasons. I'm not going to specify like what I carry 3 season and what I don't. Like a lot of times I'm carrying spikes in my bag like 6 or 7 months out of the year when you're hiking, because it's just ice in the whites sometimes. But anyways, emergency bivvy. So these are super cheap to get. If you really need one and you have to use it, it should be in your bag. It's one of those things. I personally don't carry a sleeping bag. I know there's tons of people that do in the winter. By my thought process, and it may be incorrect, this is just me and friends I have who winter hike and stuff. Like I generally try to have enough clothing in my backpack, and I also carry a pad that's big enough to at least sit on and sort of lay on, that I do stuff into my pack as well. I actually keep it in the water bladder spot most of the time. But between those two things, I always figure that and clothing, I'll at least buy myself some time if, God forbid, I'm ever stuck out in the winter. And I got a lot of layers, hand warmers. I got something to keep myself off the ground, which I think is very important. And then I've got the bivvy if I really ever had to use it. So those are sort of the part of the emergency things, but that's the first 2 things that came to mind. So yeah, a pad, emergency bivvy. I keep a med kit sort of bag with your basic like gauze and stuff like in that. I kind of add and take away stuff, and I need to get a splint, and there's a couple other things I think I have on sort of mental list that I'd like to also get in my pack, because in case you need to use them. But just a basic med kit. I actually have like some like ankle wraps and like different things, so like if you sprain your ankle, where you could wrap that, or I have like a little knee, like a sort of not foam but like mesh material knee brace. I just carry those things in there as well, and they've usually stayed in there. Let's see what else we got in here. So then I carry an extra headlamp and goggles. I think Slasher's always saying that 1 headlamp or 2 headlamps is as good as 1 headlamp, or I forget, or 1 headlamp is useless kind of deal. But I always carry an extra headlamp with fresh batteries in it, or I'll swap them out. Not all the time, but enough that it works, and I make sure it works. I also will carry extra goggles at the bottom of my pack in the winter if I'm planning on going above tree line. This is kind of if you look at like any winter recommendations, a lot of people will tell you to bring 2 goggles, but I experienced firsthand why. And the deal is that when you're kind of expending a lot of moisture and you're above tree line and the wind's blasting you and it's very cold, your goggles can actually frost up pretty easily, and it actually becomes really difficult to see, if not almost impossible. I had this happen to me on Eisenhower back in 21, I think, or 22, when I climbed in January on a very cold day. Yeah, I was basically breaking tree line to get it on at Eisenhower after doing Pierce, and my goggles started to frost up enough that I actually had difficulty seeing where I was going. So thankfully it was a clear day and nothing happened, but I will never go above tree line anywhere ever again in cold weather and not carry an extra pair of goggles, because if I just had an extra pair, I could have swapped it out really easily. If it was snowy and it was a whiteout, like it would not have been great for me and my ability to see, for sure. So I always carry an extra pair of goggles in the bottom of my pack if I'm going above tree line in the winter now. And then, and you can feel free to chime in too with some of these clothing items, Ash, because you started to mention what you put on. So there's a pretty commonality between what most people carry in the winter packs as far as layers. Some people will keep like a soft shell or a fleece layer kind of jacket. I don't really go with that. I usually have a fleece vest that I carry in my pack as well.
You're a vest person. I'm more of a full. I do like a fleece like pullover.
Yeah, but anyways, you got your hard shell, which there's many versions of these. I have an Arc'teryx Gore-Tex one. I think you have a Patagonia Gore-Tex one.
I do, yeah. I have a Patagonia, which I know like Patagonia has that reputation of kind of being very expensive.
Yeah, Arc'teryx is very pricey too. We got both of ours on sale.
Yes, I was going to say my fleece that I always wear, my Patagonia like fleece I wear over my base layer, and then my hard shell were both on sale, and honestly like best money I could have spent. Like, yeah,
I don't know. We both got really good deals on like, it was in like the middle of the summer at REI. I think.
Yeah, shop the sales. Kind of look during like those off time of years. If you you're saving money any little bit.
And helpful. I mean, you can get away with a lot of people will just get normal. I want to say like some of my stuff is just REI stuff, but the Arc'teryx shell I did spend money on, and I've been really happy with that. Your shell is basically the function of that is it's kind of what you're going to be wearing when you break tree line, or if you're on a very windy. It blocks the wind out. It traps heat around your body. Typically, you've got a hood and sort of a zip that usually come pretty much up to your chin, and so just like a very little area of your face is actually exposed. So yeah, shell layer is kind of always that always is going to stay in your pack in the winter. Like that's never going to come out,
and it doesn't take up a lot of space. It honestly,
no, they typically fold down.
It's like the
pretty
spatial
well.
equivalent of like having like a windbreaker in your bag. It really doesn't take up much space at all. I mean, it's not like a big heavy winter jacket that you might wear.
Yeah, it's like a heavy. You could think of it almost like a really heavy rain jacket. Kind of deal. Yeah, but its main function is to break wind and just it holds heat in and it doesn't let out. Like in my Arc'teryx shell is very very warm. Yeah, most days, even if it's really cold, I will have like my smart wool and a fleece and like literally that on, and that's it when I get warm.
Me too. I usually have my smart wool base layer, my fleece, and then my hard shell. And I've very rarely been super cold at the top when I've had those on.
Next, I carry a puffy jacket. This is just an REI brand one. I don't know what the weight is, but it's like a synthetic down jacket. Very warm, very toasty. One thing that I have noticed with this one in particular is that it does rip pretty easily on stuff. I mean, I've had it for 4 or 5 years, but I've been patching it together with duct tape and some different stuff. I do have a brand new Patagonia. I said like Patagonia Nano Puff that I haven't used yet. I'm kind of like saving it because it's like new and fresh. I'll probably break it out like next year or something. But yeah, I have an REI puffy jacket. Your puffy's like, I don't know, again, it's another sort of layer. A lot of times if it's more like I'm wearing my puffy if it's not super windy or I'm not exposed. If I'm just in the woods stopped, or I might be stopped doing something, like when I was filming, when I was on the Kinsman's on Bald Peak, like I just threw on my puffy because it's a nice warm layer and it'll warm you up quick. Another thing that packs down very well usually in your pack, if you squeeze the air out of them, like it doesn't take up much room. They don't weigh much either.
I personally don't have a puffy. Maybe it's something I'll invest in at some point. I know even if we're not going to be above tree line, I'll typically bring my hard shell jacket. But if I feel like I might need more than those 3 layers, I'll pretty much, I mean, I shouldn't even say if I think I need more. I pretty much always pack an additional pullover fleece of some kind, and then I'll also bring a second base layer shirt, whichever one I don't have on. So if I don't have on my smart wool one, I will bring my Under Armour one.
Yep.
So I'll kind of compensate by doing that. Maybe at some point I'll look into getting like a puffy, but even when I ski now, I just wear my hard shell and I've been perfectly fine. So
yeah, I mean, for the record, like I've never really had to wear like my smart wool shirt, a vest, and my puffy and a shell.
Yeah,
and plus like hat, gloves, balaclava.
I've never had
like
to put on a second fleece over my fleece and then a hard shell. It's honestly, like Nick said, it's just good to have extra clothing if one thing gets really wet or sweaty.
Don't like take our word for it or blame us if you still feel cold on a mountain and you're wearing all that stuff. But like for real, that crazy cold stretch we had last year, like I walked around our neighborhood And I think that was like the morning, it was around 0 degrees or 2 degrees, and it was windy and super cold. And like, I think I wore the puffy underneath my shell that day, now that I think of it, but like I was just walking and not hiking, and that day was very, very cold. Yeah. Like it was approximate to probably how it's going to feel when you're on a winter peak a lot of times, that particular day. But, like those shells are super warm, and
they are, yeah.
And it's all just about layering.
Exactly. And I mean, I wear my shell for skiing, I mentioned. I'll even wear it running or walking around our neighborhood sometimes. So
you wear yours a lot more common use. Like I pretty much just break out my entire shell.
Multifunctional. I'll wear it to work sometimes if it's kind of like rainy and raw out. So it's definitely very useful to have. I mean, I pretty much always pack an extra of everything that I already have on. So in addition to like another base layer and a fleece pullover, I'll also pack another pair of leggings, and then I usually always pack another extra pair or two of socks as well, just in case I get wet or too sweaty and I need to quickly change something out or put something over it.
Yeah, that kind of goes into my next thing. So I think I already mentioned, but I have sort of an Arc'teryx vest, but I have an older fleece vest that's actually from it's like a golf clothing wear company, but it's warm and it's fleece synthetic. It's pretty good stuff. I think your dad actually gave that to me a while back. So I keep that extra in my pack as well as sort of another thing I can throw on. And then you were just talking about some extra stuff, but I always carry an extra wool hat basically. And then I stuff in some type of gloves, whether smart wool gloves or like REI gloves, just extra dry gloves that I don't plan on using unless something's gone wrong, if I'm tapping into those things. Like I should not
or if you trip and fall and your hand goes right in the snow and your hands get wet. It's just, it's good to have.
Yeah, that's true. And then I carry extra socks in there. And then I also carry smart wool leggings that I figured like if, again, that's like backup scenario. Like I'd hope to never have to break out those leggings in the winter and put those on underneath my pants, because it's probably because I'm going to be sleeping or staying outside for a while and I didn't plan on it. So I carry those. Another thing that I did want to throw in here is your hike safe card. Visit them if you hike in New Hampshire, get a hike safe card. It sort of goes towards fish and game, and presumably if you have that card and you have everything on you that you should and all the essentials, you shouldn't get fined in the event that you do need a rescue. So it's to a good cause. It doesn't cost that much money. I think of it like I fish and stuff, so I end up buying a fishing license every year. To me, I see it like a sort of hiking license. And again, that's just for New Hampshire that does that, but go find them online. If you just search Hike Safe New Hampshire, it comes out. And they do family ones, so like you're actually right? On mine. Yeah, they're annual. And you're on mine even because they do family ones for like an extra $5 or something stupid. Mm-hmm. So that's not really a gear thing, but just something I carry with me all the time. As far as devices to track me and sort of use to communicate, I would say most places in at least at the popular peaks and the whites, like you're probably going to have cell service. Your mileage may vary depending on your carrier, or at least I'll say you'll have service probably at least when you're on the summits. I even had service on the summit of Owl's Head, which was kind of interesting, but not fantastic, but to get a text message out. Once you go below like 3,500 feet though, it was like game over, or even shortly off the summit. But on that topic, I carry a Garmin InReach Mini that friends of the podcast, Mike and Lori, have let me borrow. I think it's actually Mike's, but it's been on long-term loan to me, I think, for the past 2 years now. So thanks, guys, for letting me borrow this thing and continue to use it. But it's a Garmin InReach Mini. The most of the time I've used this is just to communicate with you when I've been by myself and I'm in a no cell service area, aka the high peaks region of the Adirondacks. Like there's not really great cell service. At least I haven't seen a lot in my experience. But it allows you actually to connect to your phone basically with Bluetooth, and using an app, you can actually send out text messages. It does other things. This is just what I happen to use it for. And I carry it mainly because I had been doing a decent amount and do still do a decent amount of solo hiking. So it's just a nice thing to have to communicate with you if I need to, and just to have on me as an SOS sort of feature in the event that I did need to use it. Yeah,
I always have, it always gives me peace of mind when I know that you have that with you, like on the occasions you are alone.
And a lot of people carry those. I mean, when I was hiking a few weeks ago, I must have seen 20 or 30 across the day. So there's multiple devices that do the same thing. And again, that does a lot more than what I'm just mentioning it does, but that's what I use it for. And that's generally what I carry. And I carry that on me year round too. That's not just a winter thing. So we'll continue. We'll come back. I had food on here, but we'll come back to food.
Oh, just a few other things I wanted to add to.
Yeah, sure.
For my stuff. Yeah. I don't want to be too redundant for what you already mentioned.
No, it's fine. I still have a decent amount of stuff to go through, but.
Oh, do you?
Do you want to just wait and see. Yeah, I have like not like a ton, but
I was gonna just mention like I also do like an extra hat. I usually pack at least 2 hats, an extra pair of gloves. Sometimes I'll even pack an extra pair of mittens. I'm trying to think if there's anything else clothing wise that I'll sometimes pack. Oh, this isn't necessarily something you'd bring on the hike, but I always highly recommend having a comfortable pair of shoes waiting for you in your car. That's true.
And a change of clothes.
Finish the hike. Yes, and potentially a change of clothes.
Especially if you're driving up for a day hike and driving home.
Keep another change of clothes, a nice pair of comfy shoes. Yeah, Crocs, slippers, whatever.
That's a pertinent thing.
In the car.
Yeah.
You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, you will. Okay, so what else I had? Typically in the winter, I'd carry 2 liters of water. I need to get some new insulating things for them because I've had these neoprene ones and I actually had them freeze up when I did the Kinsman's and it was actually really cold and it was enough to I need to buy other things. But in the meantime, what I've been doing, which has been working for the last 2 hikes, even though Adams and Madison wasn't particularly cold, is just putting them in those neoprene socks and then actually just putting them in an old wool sock, which has worked perfectly well.
Gives an extra
layer. When we did Owl's Head, it was pretty cold. We were out probably long enough where I would have started to see ice up, I would think, if I didn't have it insulated a little bit better. So that was cool. In my water, I've actually been using liquid IV lately, which has been I don't want to say it's a game changer, like it was a ridiculous thing, but I noticed that I'm way more hydrated on trail. Frankly, I noticed that I am peeing more throughout the day. I try to load up both of those 2 liters with hydration packs of some sort.
Oh, and speaking of peeing, this might be more for the girls, the hiking girls. So I always pack with me a thing of like water wipes, just in case. Obviously,
would those freeze in the winter?
I've never had an issue with it. I keep them at the very bottom of my pack, wrapped in all my clothes.
Okay.
But I usually always pack those. That's honestly something I pack year round. I just feel like it's nice, and then I just bring like an extra baggie to put them in if I need it. Yeah. And tissues and chapstick as well. I know those are kind of like miscellaneous things. I don't want to be all over the place.
And remember that you're bringing a Ziploc baggie or something with them to put you in, because leave no trace. Don't leave that shit on the ground after you use it. For your tissues and, Yeah. It might be gross, or even if you poop
when
and
you're
you
wiping
gotta put
down
toilet paper on there. Like, if you can't bury it, you got to take it out with you. So
yes. I don't know if that was too off topic.
I think after having a young child, I'm way less grossed out about stuff like that now than I used to
I'm
be.
just saying, though, it's good to always have, like, the water wipes make you feel just a little bit cleaner.
Yeah.
If you need to wipe at all down there. But definitely make sure you keep them in the warmest part of your pack, obviously. I'm glad you mentioned that. But those are just some other quick things I thought of.
So in my pack, I also carry a compass, which I have taken 1 navigation class from REI. Would I probably be super reliable at using a compass in an emergency situation other than kind of getting a periphery of my directions and stuff? Probably not. Like, I don't think I'd be setting a point. Like, again, I'll freely admit, like, we're probably due to go back and actually use a navigation class.
It was super interesting to learn about, but I feel like I forgot all of it already.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have, so I do have a piece of paper I keep in my pack that they actually gave us at that, but I think in a situation where I was really needing to use it, I probably wouldn't be clear-headed enough to, like, actually just be like, to get out of an emergency situation. There's probably other logical things I'd think about first, like which direction did I come from? Can I determine that first? But I do carry a compass. Hope to get more adept with that in the future and try some bushwhacks with people that know what they're doing, or maybe take a class or something. We did do a bushwhack, technically like a sort of bushwhack class in Rhode Island, so it's not like it was anywhere crazy.
It was still very interesting,
but we had to set like a bearing point and sort of do
it
stuff.
Wasn't honestly that complicated once we got to like practice it, but I feel like if you don't use it, you lose it. Like, I don't remember how to do it.
No, that's well said. Well said. So in addition to your compass, I always carry a map of some sort. There's a bunch of generic waterproof maps that you can carry of the White Mountains of the 48 4,000 footers. I always try to make sure I either have a copy of that map, or obviously if I'm hiking the Adirondacks, I'm taking a waterproof copy of an Adirondack map, or if we're in Maine, I'm taking a waterproof copy of that. So I always have a map that's at least got the trails that we're planning on doing that day on it. Paper copy, a lot of people will actually use a trick and print it on photo paper or something that's waterproof. Like, waterproof paper is a thing you can get for your printer. Laminate it. Just stuff to keep it dry, because it's probably going to get wet if you're hiking through the snow. And even if it's not snowing that day, you're going to be going through trees a lot of times that have snow on them, and you're going to end up probably getting wet at some point.
Your hands are going to be sweaty.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So this is kind of also getting into the extra stuff that you're throwing in there that you plan on using. I think I'm through most of my like sort of auxiliary stuff. But extra liner gloves, I usually carry a pair or two. Liner gloves are sort of the thin gloves that you're going to be wearing under your mittens, presumably, or just thin, like you think of like running gloves, like they're not very heavy gloves.
Ones that you can text with are ideal.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I think I have a couple different pairs of liner gloves. I have some, I think they're like, you get them for me, but the ones that I love, they're like Z-Packs, like possum gloves, but they're like some sort of synthetic wool and like legitimately like possum fur mix. Those things were insane. They were really good at conducting, I guess, for your hands to be able to text and stuff.
And you want to keep your hands warm. That's probably one of the most important, your hands and your feet.
Yeah, and I mean, noted that when your hands and your feet get cold, why that happens when you're really cold is because your body, with the way it works, in your secondary nervous system, whatever they call it, like basically as you get colder, your body starts to go into a pseudo survival mode where it sends all the blood to your core. So that's like your brain and your heart and your lungs. The important parts. The important stuff. You can live without your hand. You can't live without your vital organs. So when you get cold, the first sign of being cold and significantly cold, when your blood starts sucking blood from your hands or your feet, like it means you need to do something to warm yourself up. Whether that means you need to move just to generate some heat or put on another layer, that's going to depend on the situation and where you are on the trail. But that's the literal reason for why your hands and your feet start to get cold. It's your body's pulling blood from your extremities towards your core. So we got liner gloves, particular brands. So I mentioned that Z-Packs one. I think I just have like REI liner gloves and some other off brands. I just use
REI ones.
And like Ash said, if you want to use your phone and stuff, make sure that the touch things work. And even a lot of times if they say the touch things work well, they don't work that well.
You almost need to like try them on it in the store and test them out.
Yeah. And that's the best thing I was just about to say is just test them out if you can. And if it's online, test them before you actually need to use them. And I mean, I've learned too, I have REI sort of. They're not like an in-between. They're like thicker gloves, but the touch works awesome on them because I've been using them with my camera and stuff in the cold, and I haven't had an issue yet.
I have to double check which brand I have. They might just be REI, but they work great because, again, I wear these running, walking, if I need to like, pick a podcast or change the song I'm listening to, I can do that without taking off my gloves. It's also nice too when you're hiking if you want to take pictures. There's beautiful scenery in winter hiking, but sometimes it's not wise to take your gloves off to take a picture. So,
No, I mean, and when people talk about liner gloves, that's something I didn't mention is typically if the wind's really cold and stuff, like you really don't want to be taking off your gloves, or if you are for very brief periods of time.
I honestly keep my liner gloves on for most of the hike, unless my hands are like getting really hot. But
yeah, I mean, if it's really cold, you're not going to really be wanting to take them off much at all.
Even when you're eating, like.
So you want really like ideally you want very fitted suit, like semi-warm liner gloves. And typically they're thin enough so that you can actually just throw on your mittens, which the mittens are actually the next item that I had on here. So mittens are always inherently warmer than gloves because your fingers are all together in one section, and they're typically a little bit thicker. They're more awkward and you can't do as much stuff with mittens on. So that's why, like Ash was saying, if you can get mittens with straps on them or something that hang from your arms, those are kind of awesome. Mine are just, I think, black diamond mittens. And they have little Velcro straps so I can like at least strap them on they're made to like strap on your sort of, I guess, where the ratchet, whatever you call it, like the tab you'll have on the end of the sleeves on your jacket to be able to tighten those sleeves. You want them easily
accessible. You don't want to have to dig in through your bag.
They're made to Velcro onto there so that you can at least keep them, but they're made so like you can just put them on when you're not doing stuff. Say like you're just hiking on trail, you have them on above tree line to keep your hands nice and warm. You want to snap a picture quickly, just take the mitten off and like get your camera phone, snap the picture, put your mitten right back on. And another thing I like to do is put hand warmers in my mittens at the start of the hike.
Because then you can kind of like hold your hands together, grip the hand warmer.
I've gone through hikes too where I haven't used my mittens much. So like the hand warmers are sitting in there, but like hand warmers to me, they're not that expensive. No. It's good to just have them ready to go in case you need them pretty much.
I pretty much always have them in my pockets, in my mittens, and in my socks, like in my on top of my socks.
One of the newer pairs of they're actually outdoor research liner gloves I got, they actually came as a set with liner gloves and in a shell, and they actually have a pocket on them on the back of your hand, literally made to put a hand warmer or some sort of chemical warmer in, which are pretty cool. That was in my Christmas
There's so
presents.
Many different types of gloves out there, but I think the biggest takeaways are
you probably want mittens. This is the biggest takeaway.
And then for your base layer gloves, you want to be able to text and do things like that in them.
For sure. All right. That kind of covers, I think we covered all the hand stuff that you can probably use. The next thing is, I believe it's pronounced Balaclava. PUDs Podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm just going through editing this. So me and Ash, forgive us, we totally butchered the word balaclava. Balaclava is the thing that actually goes around your head and goes over your head, protects you, and keeps you nice and warm in the winter. So balaclava, forgive us for butchering it. Now let's get back to it. But it's the thing that basically goes over your face and your head.
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait a second.
Where your eyes are just exposed. It kind of just pulls over. And I like the one that I have a lot. I'm not sure of the brand.
Mine's Smartwool.
Oh, you have a smart one?
Yeah.
Mine's nice because you actually can pull off like the bottom face of it. It's magnetic and it just snaps up. So it's nice if you need to like just eat or like take a drink of water, you can just pull it down. Again, this is something you're going to be using when it's really cold, probably when you're above tree line or just hanging out and eating lunch or just in the cold and wind. It's made to just completely cover your face. And this combined with my next item pretty much seals up your face entirely if you're hiking above tree line and it's cold in the winter, or just hiking below tree line and it's really cold in the winter. But goggles. So this is like my main pair of goggles. If you're going out on a really cold day, like when I did the Kinsman's, pretty much before I broke tree line, I'm throwing on that shell layer. I'm switching on my gloves and my hat for dry gloves and dry hats. I'm putting on my balaclava. I'm putting on a heavier Smartwool hat. And I'm putting on my ski goggles. So that's to really seal up your face completely. I mean, a lot of people think of goggles is just, it's like blocking your face so you can see and stuff, but it really keeps your face warm too.
It does.
It's keeping any skin you have minimized, like any skin exposure you have to the cold minimized.
You want to basically, if you're at the top, you're fully exposed on a bald summit, it's windy, you don't want like any skin exposed.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable to have really cold wind blowing in your eyeballs and your eyelashes freezing
up. It like
up,
legitimately hurts.
Which does happen. I mean, it literally, if you haven't hiked in the winter a lot before, at least even around here, God knows we don't live in the coldest area of like the US or the world or anything like that. But it gets cold enough on the mountains in New Hampshire where your eyelashes quite literally start freezing up. And like if you're wincing or whatever from the wind, like I've had it where like your eyelashes are actually kind of stuck together. So it gets quite nippy and uncomfortable on your face and your eyeballs. You want to
be in a place where you can completely cover your entire face if you need to.
Yeah. So yeah, goggles. I think the company that we just got, I think was Glade that we might have got.
Yeah, I really like those.
I really like these goggles. I'm gonna plug for them a little bit. I've hiked in them.
We can link maybe them too. Yeah, the goggles.
They weren't super expensive compared to like a lot of the glasses sort of ski brands like Smith and ones like that. Like they get really expensive really quickly for goggles. But yeah, those have worked well. I already mentioned hand warmers, but I keep extra hand warmers and toe warmers in easily accessible places in my pack. My thought's always that if someone else needed them too, I've got them on me. Mm-hmm. And I always crack a couple and keep them in my pockets and my gloves. Just a nice trick if my hands are really cold. Like typically I'll just take off my glove and put it in my pocket and put it on a hand warmer and next to my body, and my hand usually warms up pretty quickly. So we're kind of getting down there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Sorry, I went off the rails a little bit with some of the stuff.
No, I cannot read my handwriting here. Oh, I already mentioned a pad. And
I always bring my license and insurance card with me too. I know that's kind of random, but God forbid, I don't know, I always bring that stuff with me too.
Okay, I deciphered my handwriting because I wrote number 2. I'm like, number 2 stuff. I'm like, what is that? And this is poop stuff. So I have like basically a trowel and I have toilet paper I carry in there. This is a year-round thing I carry.
Toilet paper, like I said, the water like wipes.
Yeah,
are good sometimes too.
Yeah, I'll carry that, and then I usually carry a little mini Bic lighter for fire starting capabilities. Why I carry this is actually, and I did a little research because I was like, oh, it's cool like to have a fire starter or flint, and people have different things. But if you look at like the most reliable thing to start a fire, like a lot of surveys online, and this I think was like straight from REI, and it was like a mini Bic lighter is almost the most reliable thing you can carry on you, like in any situation. Yeah. I believe that's pretty much mostly it.
PUDs Podcast. Hey everybody, one more little detail that I'm going to throw in here, and that's that I do carry trekking poles, or at least a single trekking pole on me with a snow basket, and usually affix it to the side of my pack that is also a pretty crucial thing that I usually take in the winter. Good for stability, good for other situations that you might run into. So just noting that I forgot to mention trekking poles here. Let's get back into it.
I think before we get into traction, because this is also a thing that's related in a pack, I carry a dry bag full of food. And in the winter, sometimes what you want to carry for food is different than what you might want to carry different times of the year. So
Definitely.
do you want to kick that off?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what I would pack for food hiking in the winter, because like Nick said, like this is different than what I might pack hiking in like the fall, summer, spring. So for the winter, I like to pack things that aren't going to become hard when they get cold.
Think of things that freeze are gonna potentially freeze and get really difficult to eat.
Exactly.
Or uncomfortable
like
to eat.
Cliff Bars are horrible sometimes.
Cliff Bars not good to bring in the winter. They turn into rocks.
I tend to pack granola is a big thing. Trail mix and granola are good go-tos because they tend to kind of keep the same, even if they get cold, they keep the same consistency as they would when they are not cold. So you're still able to eat them the same way. They're not like more difficult to chew. And I love granola and trail mix because there's so many different varieties. You can get sweet, salty, there's so many different kinds, spicy. So you can kind of get whatever tastes you prefer. Mm-hmm. You can mix them together. And they're filling too. And they're also, I like them because they're very easy and quick to just like take a handful and pop it in your mouth. Because we've definitely experienced this. While sometimes when you're hiking, you basically stop just long enough to shove some food into your mouth and then you keep going, because it's just, unlike on a warmer day, you're not necessarily going to plop down, take off your backpack,
you're not going to want to hang out a lot of times. No. Like you might stop for like 5 or 10 minutes, but if it's like 10 degrees and there's like a negative 10 wind chill and you're sitting like on a summit, like you might not even stop on a summit, or odds are in the winter, if it's a really nice cold day with really good views, like you might want to like stop even below tree line to eat food and find a nice place to hunker down.
Which we've done many times. So again, granola and or trail mix are definitely my go-tos, because again, they're very filling. You can pack like a whole bag of them. I use a dry bag too to keep my food in. I'll also sometimes pack like Reese's or candies that like when they get cold, they're still really good and they're still easy to eat. Those will fill you up. They have the peanut butter in them. I'm trying to think of anything else I might pack in the winter.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll pack fruit snacks. Yeah. They can be kind of tough sometimes too, but I would say granola and trail mix are kind of like my two go-tos.
Yeah, I mean,
in the winter.
You definitely overlap to some stuff I like, but I mean, typically what I've been taking like this year especially is like Minis Reese's peanut butter cups. I really love. I'll unwrap them before and just put them in a bag. I really like any sort of like planters, like trail mix. I've been eating like a peanut butter chocolate one lately, or just mixing different ones. And then I really like jerky. So I like either the
That's
sweet and hot. That's
one thing that we differ on.
Like I'll buy
girl.
like a bigger bag of sweet and hot like Jack Link's jerky, or if I'm feeling like splurging a little bit, I'll get the Crave jerky. They have like a teriyaki pork one, and they have like a blackened cherry barbecue. But again, stuff that doesn't really freeze up, like jerky might get a little harder, but it's nothing like trying to eat a Cliff Bar.
Or
I've seen people do a lot of cool different things in the winter too. Like I've recently seen some people carry hot chocolate on them, which is kind of cool. Like I want to try carrying a hot thermos of soup or something. Yeah.
I've never done that either.
People carrying sandwiches. Shout out to a friend of the podcast, Mike Trokey, but he actually puts a sandwich usually like in one of his jacket pockets, so it actually stays warm and doesn't freeze up.
I'll have to try that. Sometimes I really want a sandwich when I'm hiking, but it's like not always the best.
I don't want a frozen sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want a sandwich popsicle.
So that's kind of what I've been carrying lately. I like to do granola sometimes too. And I'll also carry like, I have these fruit leathers that I'll get from like, I forget the company.
Like just those dried fruit.
Yeah, or dried, and I was going to say dried fruit works really well too in the winter if you like that. Because it's dry.
And get creative with it. You can mix stuff together, make your own. Like,
bring some candy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just trying to fuel your body, and it's something that you can eat quick. And
yeah, and also a worthy consideration is the packaging that it comes in, because sometimes depending on the bag, like make sure the Ziploc on whatever bag you have like works easily, because we've been out there before where like you're trying to rip something open and you got like mittens on or whatever, and you don't really want to take your gloves off to try to open a bag or do something. Like,
I like the ones
open up
that
your bags ahead of time, like have them ready to go, so that like if you do need to just wolf down some food,
just like the pull, like this, I don't know the best way to describe it, but the ones that you can just kind of slide.
Yeah, like we've actually taken stuff out of bags and put it in just the Ziplocs with like the slide locks on them, just to make it easier on ourselves for when you like want to eat on the trail. And I know we are talking like there's plenty of mountains in the Whites and stuff, and like we're gearing it towards the 48 in New Hampshire, but there's plenty that aren't above tree line. But I mean, we've been like even on Tom Field Willie, like we had a cold enough day where we weren't exposed, and it was still just like we need to just eat some food and like
get Grey J's like death staring quick and easy to eat, but is also going to fill you up.
Yeah. And you're also burning a lot more calories in the cold too. Like even if you're just standing there, your body's burning calories trying to keep you warm. So it's important to make sure you stop and eat food, even more so than you would in other seasons.
Yeah, take little breaks, shove some peanuts into your mouth.
Yeah, and shove some peanuts right on in there. And yeah, I have like an Osprey. I think it's like a 5-liter dry bag. I don't know. I have a 3-liter dry bag. It's not that big, but that's what I keep. But I just kind of just throw all my stuff, all my food in that. And yeah, just to cap that all together, that's what I generally keep in my pack, excluding the traction gear that we're going to talk about and some other gear. But that's what works for us. As Josh said, one thing I think you do lose with a little bit smaller pack, like a lot of people will carry 50 plus liter packs in the winter, is that you really need to strategize maybe a little bit where you're putting stuff in your pack. And kind of how you're putting it. I'll use the netting on my pack too for stuff that I'd maybe want to be as accessible, or hip pockets or things like that, or clip things on here and there, just so I can get at them if I really need to. Because with a bigger pack, it's a little bit easier to like open it up and actually.
Yeah, like mine, I can open it up and it's like a giant drawstring, and I can get things pretty easily. But still, if you're digging to the bottom of your bag for something that you're going to use throughout the hike, you might want to not put it at the bottom of your bag.
Put the stuff on the bottom of your pack that you don't think you're going to be using, or you hope to.
Like your extra clothes.
Yeah, like my emergency bivvy and my med kit is always. I always keep that at the. And actually, my med kit, that's probably a stupid idea to do, because when I cut myself recently, I wish I had Band-Aids further up. So maybe not your med kit down there, but the extra stuff like extra hat and gloves, things like that, I'll put at the very bottom, all the way up to like on top of my pack. Inside is probably going to be like my shell, Balaclava, like mittens, and like not even food will be on top. Usually food's kind of at the bottom a little bit. I can dig for that.
Middle, bottom. I tend to kind of wrap my dry bag too in like my extra clothes sometimes too, to keep stuff warm.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. And I did want to mention, just to take it back to the water for a second before we move on to traction, but I just use plain Nalgene bottles. There are insulated bottles that we have that have actually worked pretty well and are a valid alternative to wrapping your water bottles with stuff, but they're also heavier, so that's kind of why I don't use them.
I like how we just use like the Nalgene type bottles, because they're just much lighter.
And this is another thing, is that water freezes top down. So if you want to store your water bottles in the winter, just make sure they're sealed and that they're not going to leak. But you want to put your water bottles upside down so they actually start freezing from the bottom up. So you got the bottom on the top.
That's a good point.
The water will actually freeze down from the bottom.
I don't think I've ever had an issue with water freezing though.
Yeah. I've only seen it 2 or 3 times since I've been out where it's been cold enough for that to happen, and I was out long enough for it to happen.
It'll be a little like chilled, but
no, when I was on the Kinsman, it was like straight up a third of slush by the time I finished. So it wasn't a fantastic feeling. All right. So we went over what we're wearing, what's in the pack. We went over food and what we like to eat for food. And that kind of really just leaves us with traction. And I will say the only other thing I have other than traction that I do carry sometimes is an ice axe, which I've only used a handful of times. I used it in the Adirondacks a few times, and I haven't really had to use it too much in the Whites. Again, I've said in past episodes, I really want to plan on taking a class and using it. I know how to drive it into the ground and use it to sort of position myself and get down from stuff, but that's the only experience I have with it. And I think if you pick the right days, and maybe this is unpopular, but I think a lot of the common routes in the Whites, and if you do it in good trail conditions on a good day, you shouldn't really need an ice axe. It depends. That's just what I've seen in my journey so far. Has there been situations where I definitely could have used an ice axe and I didn't have it? For sure.
See, I don't think I've ever been in that situation with you.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in the Adirondacks coming down from Phelps and going up and coming down from the Wolf Jaws, I definitely used it just to like punch in and hold on to. Deep snow and ice, usually in areas where you have nothing else to grab onto. Yeah. Trees work really well a lot of places, but if you're above tree line and you need it, like, I mean, the biggest thing is to stop yourself from sliding across like an ice field, say into like King Ravine from like Mount Adams. And having been up there this weekend, it's interesting to imagine when you get the snow like pack like that, and if it turned to ice, like you're just coming down Adams on the north side, and like I could see how that could turn into just a sheet of ice and you could literally slide a pretty long way.
Oh, another quick thing too, I just thought of, because we talked a little bit earlier about like what to start off in and kind of how to like layer yourself, obviously. Mm-hmm. But one thing we do try to do, especially if when do you want to put on your hard shell?
Yeah, this is good to get into.
Balaclava, I keep thinking I'm saying it wrong.
It's Balaclava, I think.
It sounds like baklava. That's why.
It does, yeah. I said that earlier, I think, wrong in the podcast.
But anyway, so
see if I edit that out or keep it in.
When we essentially layer up, because you don't really want to layer up on the summit. You want
to be ready before you want to
layer up prior to getting to the summit. So,
yeah, and we keep saying summit, but even if it's just anywhere on your hike where you know you're going to be in the open, and you know it's going to be cold, exactly. You're going to be exposed as a more correct
not necessarily
word.
Just the summit.
You're going to be open to the wind more in the elements and cold air.
Yeah, so typically when we'll do that is pretty much, I would say right when we're about to break tree line. If we notice that we're coming up on breaking tree line, it's always more comfortable and more pleasant and more just easier to layer up when you're still under the trees rather than when you're exposed.
Yeah, rather than you're like trying to rip stuff out of your backpack and you're like freezing
so that
cold
way you can kind of take a minute, you can like get all your stuff out, put all your stuff on, layer up, maybe have a quick something to drink, maybe a quick thing to eat before you break tree line. So I just wanted to note that's typically when we layer up.
Nope. Yeah, that was good to mention. So traction, couple different categories here. I mean, I've delved into them in the past on the podcast a little bit, but this is a whole specific episode on it, so I'll get more specific about it. So do you want to explain when you should wear snowshoes and when you should wear micro spikes to people?
Sure.
It's a hot topic. We're not trying to be preachy either. I'm going to try to do this in the less preachy way possible.
I am a amateur when it comes to winter hiking.
There's people far more experienced than us.
I mean, Nick is a lot more experienced than me, given his
again,
stats versus mine, but
not compared to many, many other people out
so
there.
So this is somebody as I would say like seasoned amateur giving this advice.
That's fair. You've done some hikes and snowshoes.
I've done a good variety.
And,
so I would say when the trail has been broken out, meaning there's no heavy layers of fresh recently fallen snow, the trail is packed down, it's broken out. In those situations, your safe bet is typically to wear spikes.
And when we say packed down, we mean that you can actually stand on the trail without breaking through the surface of it.
Yes. So when you're standing, you're right on top.
Yeah,
you're not just sinking under.
Yeah,
you're not.
Your feet aren't sinking a foot or doing what they refer to as post-holing.
You're just right on top of the snow.
Yeah.
And it's packed down. It's hard, Yep. So in that situation, you're good for the most part to wear spikes. You don't necessarily have to wear snowshoes. You definitely still can wear snowshoes, but you don't have to.
Yep.
I'm not going to lie. I'm somebody who absolutely hates wearing snowshoes. Like
most people hate wearing snowshoes.
I just hate it. I'd almost rather carry them than have to wear them. I know that sounds silly. Like if I can take them for a free ride, I would take that any day over putting them on. But and then when you want to wear your snowshoes is kind of the opposite situation. So there's a layer of fresh snow,
or even just completely fresh snow.
Yeah, completely fresh snow.
Nobody's been out yet.
You do not see any foot tracks or anything. It's completely fresh fallen snow. When you step into it, your feet sink down. Yep. Those are the situations where you're going to need your snowshoes.
Yeah, and what snowshoes do is they allow you and provide you a little bit more flotation over the snow. So the whole concept behind is that it spreads out your body weight, so you're not sinking as deep into the snow when you're hiking.
It's courteous to others
anybody
as well.
that's ever hiked uphill in like 2 feet of fresh snow or even a foot of fresh snow or even 6 inches of fresh snow can attest, but it gets very exhausting really quick to do that in bare boots without traction. So snowshoes allow you to kind of do that a little bit more easily. You don't sink in as much. Newer snowshoes, like the ones I have, and I mean, they're not even that new anymore, but I just mean new in a sense of modern. More mountaineering snowshoes will actually have heel lifts, or I think they call them televators sometimes.
My new ones have that, right?
Yeah, they do. But it actually allows you to kick up. It's like basically a bar that comes up on your snowshoe and will actually, it basically levels out your foot more so that you're not putting as much strain. I believe it would be really your calves that are kind of doing it, because when you're actually going uphill.
I don't think I've ever if anything, maybe once I've had to use mine.
But those are kind of a nice little device that if you're going uphill, it makes it just a little bit easier for you to do that if you're in snowshoes. And typically more mountaineering type snowshoes will have crampons actually underneath your feet in them that provide traction. But yeah, that's the general rule, is that if the trail's super packed out and you're not going to break through it and it's like a sheet of ice, or if it's just really hard packed icy snow, like you're good to just wear your spikes and stuff. But if it's like fresh snow, or even if the trail is broken out and kind of looks packed, but you start to step into it and you realize, oh, it's like pretty loose powdery snow, it's not very consolidated, like you should be wearing snowshoes.
Yeah, I think a good rule to follow is if you think you might need snowshoes, you probably
should be wearing.
You'll know if you don't need them. Yeah. Like if you're easily walking over the snow right on top, it's packed down.
Yep.
But you'll know, I mean.
Yeah, and like some of the social medias just get crazy with people tearing each other apart over wearing snowshoes or not. But you got to realize in the end, we're all hiking, we're all out there doing the thing. If you're super concerned with people getting hurt in post holes and stuff, I would argue that if you wear snowshoes, it shouldn't really happen that much. I know there's definitely cases of people that have gotten injured by people leaving post holes. I've gone over post holes before, but really quick, a post hole basically is when you're punching through the snow and leaving like maybe a foot to like a thigh deep.
Yeah, they can be really dangerous if you don't
area of snow. And why they get dangerous is if you have fresh snow fall on top of it after you just post holed up a trail, it just makes the trail a mess. You can't see. It makes it probably more likely you're going to roll an ankle or something. The more I'm talking about it, I'm like, yeah, post holes kind of suck. A lot of times it just destroys trail because it can freeze over and it just makes it really unpleasant to walk up. Really. I guess what I'm trying to get across is like, just realize that we're all hikers and like, don't like go rip each other's throats out or or whatever equivalent metaphor you want to use for sometimes people who just get crazy on social media and really preachy about it. Like, just try to use common sense. Like, and if you see someone on the trail that should be wearing snowshoes and they aren't, like maybe just be like, hey, like, do you bring snowshoes with you or whatever? Like, I mean, that I've definitely not done that to people before, but seen people
I feel like you can gently recommend, like, hey, I see you have snowshoes on your pack. Like, just so you know, it gets pretty, deep up there. You might want to put them on.
And people, like, I don't think anybody loves wearing snowshoes. I mean, it's fun to go snowshoeing sometime, but it's nicer to hike in bare boots or spikes for sure. Like, it's just easier. It feels better. Most people prefer it. So yeah, that's the snowshoes versus micro spikes thing. I think we beat it to death.
The one positive thing though about snowshoes, especially depending on the brand you have, is when you're coming down from the hike, if you have snowshoes on, they can be really helpful for like the butt sliding.
Yeah, that's true. Important
stuff. They have some pros.
Important stuff.
I overall am a hater of snowshoes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we beat that to death enough. But anyways, if the trail is just powdery and loose, just you're breaking out, wear snowshoes. I understand they're expensive and there's probably all sorts of arguments about why people don't want to use snowshoes, but generally it's people who just don't want to carry them or wear them. So
yeah, they're a nuisance.
Just wear your snowshoes if you got them and you know you should probably wear them. Like, don't be someone post-holing up the trail for 3 miles. And you're also just making yourself do more work for literally no reason. It's amazing how many times we've been on trails that are unbroken out and you see like someone made it like pretty far in post-holing, like knee deep. It's like I just don't get it.
Yeah, is pain of a
have I post-holed before? Like, yeah, everybody.
It's way more of a pain of a butt.
Like, I'll freely admit, I went through like a longer section probably than I should have coming down to Adams over the weekend, where I probably could have put snowshoes on a couple weeks back. We also put snowshoes as soon as we were going up Star Lake Trail and breaking through because we were like, we need to put them on. Like, we were the first people to break out the trail and go up.
And it's okay to like not realize it right away. Sometimes you might need to hike a little bit before you realize what you need, but
odds are you're either going to get so tired that you give up and put them on if you really need them, or you're just going to exhaust yourself more for no reason when you should just wear snowshoes and potentially get shamed by people. Shame. Yeah, so speaking of our snowshoes, I have MSR Evo Ascents. They're the 25-inch ones, I believe, which I think are good up to like 225 pounds maybe or something. So they suit me pretty well. I'm not quite small enough to get down to the next size lower. I believe you have MSR Ascents. I think they make a men's and a women's version. I forget. But I think you've got the 22-inch ones, if I recall correctly.
I forget. I'm not good at remembering that stuff.
Yeah.
I would have to look at them.
You used to use a pair of, and actually we still have your pair of tubs that I think are also 22-inch snowshoes.
So the tubs were You always make fun of me.
I'm not sure what model of tubs they are, but they're definitely mountaineering ones. Like they have crampons on the bottom of them.
They were very. I always say like the word. Nick always teases me bulky.
Bulky.
They're bulky.
They're so
like,
bulky.
They're very like bulky and
all
awkward.
snowshoes are bulky.
No, but these were like extra bulky.
Yeah, they're bigger than the MSRs.
I have to say though, they were great for butt sliding. That was like the one.
Yeah, you could like sit on the tails of them almost.
It was like a little sled on your feet.
Yeah, so that's what we carry for snowshoes. Just keeping on the theme of like everybody thinks snowshoes are a pain in the ass, but such a crux thing in the winter is being able to attach your snowshoes to your pack or having a way to like either a pocket to put them in or a way to strap them on or anything.
Not every pack accommodates them as nicely as others.
Yeah, I mean I've definitely seen better packs than mine, but mine like generally works pretty well for strapping down my snowshoes. I usually put them like blade side out or the sharp side out and like strap them down. I'm still able to fit like a water bottle in the pockets or use stuff in the pockets underneath. It's not like I'm doing it in 20, like it takes me like a minute or two to get them out and put them back on. I've gotten better at it, but it works for me. A lot of people we used to use bungees actually and just bungee them to our packs when we had other packs that didn't accommodate it as well. My Gregory one I have, a lot of times you can just put it, I believe they call it the brain of your backpack, just the part that goes over the top. If your pack's big enough, a lot of times.
Of your backpack?
Yeah. You've never heard that before?
No.
Okay, the brain. The top of your pack. But like my Gregory one, I can actually just throw that top brain over it, or maybe it's not called the brain. I believe it's called the brain.
I mean, it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, but you can, in any event, you can throw that top layer over and like put your snowshoes underneath and you can just strap it down. And I've done it with that one before where it just kind of, they just sit on the top of your pack. But bungees usually work. Some people would just glue straps to their packs and like attach them on. Bungees worked for us for quite a while. Yours has a pocket that's big enough on the back that we can kind of wedge them into. That has worked.
Yeah, it does the job.
Yeah. Yours somehow is supposed to be able to strap down snowshoes, but I have not figured it out. And I've like watched YouTube videos and I just can't figure it out.
So get there on.
I'm like, why am I trying to figure it out for you? But
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So yeah, that's how we strap them to our packs. And that's the snowshoes we use. There's a lot of it. Tubbs is a really good brand. MSR. I don't know how pricey they are too compared to like other snowshoe brands. I think there's like TSL might be another one that I've seen out.
Can you rent snowshoes?
And you can absolutely rent snowshoes. I know REI does it.
We were just talking about that with we're going away. We're doing a trip soon, and my sister and her boyfriend might be talking about.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So in the Adirondacks, a fun little factoid is, and I think a lot of people probably know this if you're into hiking, but if you have 8 inches of snow in the Adirondacks, you have to have snowshoes on your pack. Like that's just a regulation in like the High Peaks world. I think it's in the High Peaks Wilderness. I forget if it's not that way throughout the entire the park, I think. Yeah. But we've been checked coming out of the Adirondack Lodge like at 5 a.m. before by a ranger.
Somebody there.
And they're like, oh, you're packed. You're probably not, the trail's packed. You're probably not going to need them, but like you're supposed to have them. So, and they will find you. And I've seen people find in the lot before walking behind us. So it absolutely does happen. Kind of just, I don't know. Yeah, there's regulations and stuff. But anyways, yes.
Yeah, pay attention, like depending on which state you're hiking. Yeah, and I mean, if there's any rules and regulations.
And snowshoes definitely can be expensive. I totally get that. I mean, I'm assuming like REI sells used ones, or you can probably find used ones from places or just on Facebook sometimes. And yeah, if you can't afford them or you don't want them and you just want to try snowshoes, like I highly recommend like renting them. I think a lot of ski places rent them up north.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You can rent them from REI or a lot like ski places down here, I think.
Or if you're somebody who's just going to hike every once in a while and may use them rather than always having your own pair, you can, you think it's going to be more cost effective, you could always, just rent them. Yeah,
and I mean, it is, it's probably worth touching upon too a little bit. Like, it is interesting walking in snowshoes. Like, I don't recommend, like, the first time you go snowshoeing or you put your snowshoes on, don't do it when you, like, need to wear them and it's powdery snow and you're, like, 2 miles from a trailhead.
Do it.
Like, wear them in some snow ahead of time.
Yeah, if you can. I know, obviously, depending on where you live, that might be tough. Or even, like, try to plan with your trip where, like, you arrive and you go for a walk in them or something.
Yeah, hopefully there's snow around. I mean, I'd say, like, everything else weather-wise aside, like even this year, like we had one snowstorm where it snowed 5 or 6 inches where presumably you could go out in your yard. Like we live in southeastern Mass, so we don't get like a ton of snow compared to a lot of New England. But just to walk around and just get comfortable, like, or just throw them on at the trailhead before you're going to actually go out and like wear them before you need to use them. I guess is the point. You want to at least
be able to put them on, like
yeah,
practice putting
that's
them
a whole
on.
different. I mean, there's different straps and bindings. Your MSR snowshoes are newer than mine, and they have a little bit newer mechanism for the binding. Mine are like 3 or 4 straps they go across that are kind of a lot. They're kind of not easy to deal with. That's kind of the old school MSR snowshoe style. There's snowshoes that have boa bindings now on them, like almost like snowboard boots or something like that are really cool. So something to consider if you're buying, but renting, definitely keep that in mind. And even I would even recommend too, if like just go out to like a ski place and just go on a snowshoe trail, like before you go try to use them on a hike, because they're just different to walk in. They're a little awkward. It's not easy to like just turn around in snowshoes.
Especially if you're somebody who's never skied or snowboarded before either. And you're not used to having just
your feet strapped into something
on your feet. Yeah.
Especially if it's like going to be for like 15 miles or something.
Well, I don't know if your first time wearing snowshoes, you'd be going 15 miles. I mean, maybe.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like, don't have it be your first time. It's like when you need to use them for that long. You'll probably be good at the end of it, but you'll be pretty used to it. So yeah, that pretty much covers it for snowshoes. I mentioned ice axes briefly. And then we'll get into sort of the 3 types of traction that I carry. The one thing I don't have yet in my sort of quiver of gear is actually full mountaineering crampons. I've heard mixed reviews on people that do have them and carry them. A lot of people that I've talked to have kind of stood by the fact that Kahtoola K10s are just easier to put on, and functionally they kind of will get you through most of what you would want crampons on in the whites. That's what I've heard so far anyways. I'll probably end up picking up some full crampons one day. I've heard that the biggest challenge with them, and again, this is just hearsay, so reach out if you have your own experience with them, but is that they're just a royal pain in the butt to put on sometimes. And when I say full crampons, like I mean like the crampons you see people like doing more, not that people wear full crampons in the whites, but like this is like, think of it like when you see people climbing Everest, like that's full crampons is like what they're wearing.
As crampon as you can get.
Yeah, they have toe points on them. They're made, I think the biggest difference from like K10s is they're made to be able to really kick into things like you're ice climbing. So like think of the crampons that you wear to like, you could kick into a vertical ice face with it and like get traction. So I don't carry those. So the first one, and probably the most common one I think you'll see if you see people hiking, is it's Kahtoola micro spikes. They're probably one of the most popular brands. They're the first traction devices that we ever bought. They'll get you pretty far along with snowshoes. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold here and my voice is fading slowly. So Kahtoola micro spikes, there's sort of, for lack of a better term, spikes that are affixed to sort of a rubber gasket that's meant to just fit over your boot. The spiky side and the spiky bit goes underneath your boot. And make sure that your spikes are pointed out into the snow. Ash had a incident where we were hiking Marcy, and she realized as we were trying to get up to Marcy Summit that one of her spikes on her left foot, I think, were on backwards, pointed into the sole of your boot.
And believe it or not, it didn't hurt.
Yeah, it didn't hurt for that long. But she was noticing she wasn't getting any traction when she was stepping up. And
I was really panicking. I was like, what's happening?
And the basis, too, of why this happened we didn't notice is, like, you start hiking in the dark a lot of times in the winter. It was probably, like, 5 a.m. So we were just putting them on and half asleep in the dark, trying to put them on so she didn't notice. But make sure that the spiky end is pointed out into the ground in the snow and not into your boot, because otherwise they're not going to do anything. Kahtoolas are made of 3/8 inch stainless steel. It's hardened stainless steel is what their marketing says. I don't know what hardened stainless steel means. I'm sure there's a technology for that. And it actually has 12 of those little stainless steel spikes.
Oh,
so those are digging.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't until today, and I looked it up. Doing that research for the pod. Yeah, so it's got 12 of those 3/8 inch hardened stainless steel spikes. I tend to use the next option a little bit more than Kahtoolas. I'll use Kahtoolas more now in the spring and shoulder season hiking. My main spikes that I've been using since I bought them probably 3 or 4 years ago are Hillsound trail crampons. Hillsound is the brand. They make crampons in all sorts of variations, as does Kahtoola. Kahtoola makes like nano spikes and all these different exo spikes, kind of different, actually sizes of spikes. That's really the biggest difference between them. and made for different situations. Like you're not going to go running around the neighborhood and if it's icy and Catula micro spikes, like it's going to really hurt your feet. Like that's my point for 3/8 inch kind of thing. This isn't like yak tracks. Like,
I don't think I've ever worn micro spikes not hiking.
Yeah, you're not going to wear them, and they're very uncomfortable generally to wear on rock in solid surfaces, which ends up beating up your spikes too, which is something I'll talk about. But Hillsound trail crampons, a little bit more robust than Catula micro spikes. These actually are 2/3 of an inch carbon steel spikes, and there's 11 of them. So there's one less spike, but they're 2/3 of an inch versus 3/8 inch. So they're a little bit bigger. Similar mechanism to how the Catula micro spikes, it just rubber gasket fits over your boots, chains on the bottom. These spike parts actually have more of a plate though, whereas Catulas are sort of just chained together. It's a little bit more rigid under your foot. And I just find them again to just be a little bit more heavy duty. And one thing I did want to mention with spikes briefly is a lot of people that hike in the whites are just different areas where you end up with shoulder season snow. And what I mean by that is like you might have one snowy area and then it gets rocky and then it gets dirt and then it gets snowy again. Or like this year in New Hampshire, we experienced that in December because we had a deluge of rain that wiped out all the snow. But when you're walking on rock and pavement, like you're going to be walking around a parking lot, when you're walking around on rock and ground and stuff, you're going to wear down those spikes a lot more than if you're walking in ice and snow. So a lot of people will carry sort of a pair of your shitty spikes, like your rock spikes, and they'll call them rock spikes because you don't care if you walk on rocks with them. Like they're going to get you past in some icy situations and they're more beat up. When you want your ultimate traction, like I just started really doing this, is like I have a newer pair of spikes that I have just been using if I know it's going to be icy and like be good all day. And actually I haven't really broken those out much. I used them on the Kinsmans because I knew it was going to be super icy.
Yeah.
That was really it. And even then I was very careful just to make sure I used it on ice and snow and I wasn't using it on rock. My older rock spike Hillsounds now, like I use those on Franconia Ridge and like they're on a pretty bare day in December and like they got really beat up. Like I noticed coming down later that day. Like they're just not as sharp as they used to be. Like if you're going to be going up sheets of ice on the trail, you want to make sure you have spiky stuff and things that's going to dig in. So.
And you can't like sharpen.
You can. So you? Yeah, you can actually sharpen them.
Because we've never done that.
I've never done it. I've talked to a couple of people who have
a device, right? Like a certain device.
Yeah, like a basically just like something to sand them down with and kind of sharpen them. I mean, people do it. I've never done it. Maybe one day I'll try it, but I don't know how well it works. Because ultimately, like, they are getting worn down. Like, the metal is literally wearing down.
I mean, maybe
things.
just to kind of, like, buy you some time until you get new ones, maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know.
And the Hillsounds also have sort of Velcro straps that they're supposed to stop them from disappearing in the snow, but I lost one on Moosalok 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
When I was post-holing
I've
through
never
a section.
lost a spike before.
Yeah.
A micro spike.
So if you find those up there, I felt more bad that I left them there. But yeah, I didn't notice for a while. They kind of just got sucked off. It was like a very small area of snow where it was kind of deep. Like it wasn't worth putting our snowshoes on. And I realized probably like a mile after we went to that point that it was gone. So that kind of sucked.
You kind of forget about them too. It's not like with snowshoes where I feel like you're very aware of them during the hike. I feel like you almost kind of get used to having them on, especially if you're walking a pretty icy
Yeah, if you're
trail.
walking on snow or whatever, you're not even going to notice after a while. Snowshoes, you very much notice that you have them on.
Yeah, these definitely
Besides
are less
the weight.
noticeable.
Yeah, micro spikes don't really weigh much. I probably should notice that. Like, you're not going to it's not going to bog you down like snowshoes are.
No.
Yeah. So the last and kind of most aggressive thing that I carry, and I've only used these really a handful of times. I've carried them on me a few times this year just because of how icy it's been. But they're Catula K10s. So K10s are sort of this hybrid between almost like trail crampons and full mountaineering crampons. These are made up of 10 3/4 inch. I think I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's chromoly steel, or it's like CHROMOLY steel, chromoly steel. Write in or comment, people, if you know how to pronounce that. I'm assuming it's just another type of steel that's supposed to be very durable, but those are 3/4 of an inch spikes.
It's interesting how there's like one less spike each time as they
I didn't notice that until you kind of mentioned that. It's actually a valid point. So these are like the most aggressive spikes I carry. I believe full mountaineering crampons will get up to spikes like an inch long. So that's the biggest trend, is that the spikes get bigger. They're made to dig more into snow and ice and give you more traction. Catula K10s, I've thrown on when we were in the Adirondacks or when I did the Wolf Jaws and did Phelps, because this is like literally like when you're going up very, very icy, like you really need to dig in ice and snow situations. enough that I was like uncomfortable and didn't feel like I was getting enough grip with the 2/3 of an inch spikes that the Hillsound trail crampons had. These fit on kind of a little bit differently than the other two. There's not a rubber gasket. It's actually just sort of a buckle strap that actually fits over your foot. And then there's a leaf spring on the bottom of them that actually lets you adjust the toe and the heel portions to the size of your boot. So you kind of adjust that and line it up, and then you kind of just buckle them down and over. And it's sort of made so your foot's a little bit independent from where your ankle is. And yeah, the bottom line is just more aggressive spikes. So made to dig into like straight up ice situations where the other spikes just aren't going to cut it. Like I'll usually say like they call it like boilerplate ice, but this is like ice that's like just very thick, hard ice. Like it's not going to break apart when you step on it or anything. Like it's just
frozen pond or something.
Yeah, equivalent like that. So I think that kind of really that rounds out. I mean, that's pretty much all the hiking gear that I carry. I think I mentioned one thing. I don't think I actually mentioned my normal headlamp that I always carry. I mentioned a backup headlamp, but I have my normal headlamp's like a black diamond, maybe like 350 or 400 lumen lamp, I think. I really like that one too because it actually tells you how much battery life is left on the side. I think I'm sure a lot of headlamps do that, but I like that.
Yeah, it's a nice feature.
Yeah, I always have that on me in the winter. And a lot of times if you're waking up early to hike, once it's like October, November around here, like you're going to be hiking in the dark if you want to get an early start. So
yes. Yeah, I always pack 2 headlamps too. I have the same ones that you have, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do.
I think you just got 2 of the same ones for each.
Yeah, I think our backup ones are like Gear Light or some off-brand, and then our nice ones are Black Diamond ones.
I guess nice is the ones that would... Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Because, I always pack 2 headlamps. I have the Catula micro spikes and the...
Hillsound Trail
micro spikes. I don't have the K10s.
No, you have K10.
I do?
Yeah, I bought you a pair of those.
As you can see, I haven't
used them, but yeah, you have K10s.
I'm a little rusty with the winter hiking.
Yeah, you have K10s.
Okay, I have K10s.
Cool. So hopefully this was useful. If you have any questions or suggestions, comments, or whatever, we're still obviously learning a lot about hiking. I think there's always something to learn in winter hiking, and we certainly are not the most experienced people out there. So if there's something we mentioned that you disagree with, or you're like, oh, you should be doing this, feel free to let us know and know what you think. Hopefully for people that really haven't gotten out at ever winter hiked, especially in New England before, hopefully this is pretty useful. Gives you a pretty good overview. And again, I think I just would want to mention too, like when we're mentioning how cold it is and stuff, like we're not trying to be intimidating or like deter you or anything, but just know it gets seriously cold up in the White Mountains in the winter. Like it gets uncomfortably cold, and I mean the cold kills people up there, literally. Unfortunately, like almost every year. So whether it's someone a hiker or skier or whatever, like unfortunately it happens. So like just be prepared. Know what you're doing. I don't recommend like your first winter hike. Don't go up to like Mount Washington or like do something like that on a crazy day.
No, start with something that's going to be
or if you do
below tree line, maybe.
Or if you do like go out, there's some guiding services out there nowadays, like Red Line Guiding out of the Whites and stuff, where they do classes and they do alpine classes. I mean, I freely admit like I'd love to take a bushwhacking class and learn a little bit more about alpine climbing with ice axes and crampons and stuff like that. Like that's something that I do plan on doing in the future, whether it's through a guide service or the AMC or whatever. But some great winter hikes to start out, like Mount Willard in the Whites. A lot of the 52s that are sheltered are really good first winter hikes. Mount Pierce, I always say, I think it's probably one of the best first winter hikes you can do.
Yeah,
if you want to do a 4,000 footer.
Good bang for your buck, for sure.
It's not super intense. It's sheltered until like 0.2 miles from the summit. It's very easy to duck back below tree line, and it's not very disorienting. I think that's a great peak.
Mm-hmm. And definitely too, like, don't go by yourself for your first winter hike. Yeah. Ideally,
go with somebody
who's ideally done it before.
Yeah, someone that's been out there before. Make sure you pack layers. Don't get too sweaty. Pack some tasty food to encourage you to keep going and fill you up and keep that energy level high.
A delicious meal for when you return.
And make sure you stay hydrated. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize in the winter is a lot of times you'll actually lose even more moisture than certain days in other seasons, because
that's a good point.
The air is so dry that every time you breathe you're losing moisture a little bit more quickly.
And you don't always feel as thirsty as you do when it's hot.
Yeah, a lot of times you're not feeling like drinking
you're not
water.
Realizing that you're
so sometimes I know personally, like I have to force myself to drink water sometimes.
Me too, especially in the winter.
And I mean, again, just because you're in the winter doesn't mean you're not going to get like incredibly mild days. Like that happens.
Oh yeah, you can get freakishly warm.
I mean,
days.
you also can have days in November or even October in the whites where it's freezing cold and like nasty, and it might as well be winter. So I mean, again, that's why I say it's really tough to say, like we're calling this like winter gear, but this is probably more like my November. Like I've been carrying what I've been carrying in my pack probably since about mid-November when I went out and did Middle Sister and Chikura in the snow and stuff. So that's kind of like, it's just use common sense when you're transitioning and keeping stuff in your pack. If you think there's a chance you're going to see ice and snow, just throw in Cthulhu micro spikes or something. Mm-hmm. It's better to have them.
Again, they're very light. They don't take up a lot of space in your pack.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully people found this useful. We finally got it out. I know we're like approaching quickly halfway through calendar winter here, but hopefully this will be sort of an evergreen thing. I know there's always sort of new technology and new sort of materials coming out and what people are using hiking, but that's what works for us right now. And if you get into winter hiking, have a safe trip. Hopefully have fun out there. A lot of times there's way better views in the winter because of less moisture in the air. Definitely less people out on the trails for the most part.
For sure, yeah.
I think most people you encounter too in the winter tend to be, I don't want to say, this sounds like snobby, I don't want to say like serious hikers.
Real hikers go in winter.
Hikers. No, that's not what I was trying to say. But when you're out there in the winter and you're starting early in the morning, people tend to be very passionate about those things. You're not going to meet people who don't love hiking.
And people are going to be looking out for you and looking out for
if
each other.
If you're headed out to the northern presidentials in the winter, odds are like you're working on your winter 48 or your grid, or you're up there to really just get an epic view. So people are very passionate and tend to be very passionate hiking in the winter, especially on cold days. Yes. I find that there's more camaraderie out there inherently when you cross only. Like when I did the Kinsman's, like each person, I only saw 2 people, but we talked for like a probably solid 5 or 10 minutes and just checking in on each other and being like, hey, like, because you know if it's a cold day and you're alone, like it's nice to check in on people and make sure people are doing good. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks Ash for sitting in. We'll probably have a few more of these. Hopefully we're actually on the eve of when Mr. Josh was supposed to become a dad again for the second time. He's
going to become a dad tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow.
When this is out, he will already be a dad. But
yep, he will.
At the time of the recording, he'll be a dad tomorrow.
Unless I return this really quickly. I don't think that's going to happen.
And Mel will be a mom, and Jeremiah will be a big brother.
Yeah. All right. Well, we wish them the best. And we'll see you. We'll see you next time. You can listen to us next time.
And we will link some of the things that we discussed.
Yeah,
I don't know how to do that, but we'll figure out how to link stuff.
It's
so
okay.
you guys have some stuff to work off of.
I think I can figure that out. So
yes.
We'll be good to go. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
PUDs Podcast was produced and recorded in Black Cat Studios by the Pud Boys. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. Find us on social media, and we'll see you next time.